Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery. Today I'm excited to have Ryan Frankel, who's a serial entrepreneur, is currently the CEO of This App Says Live, a free mobile app that rewards drivers who choose not to engage in distracted driving. He had previously founded the online nutrition coaching platform EduPlated, and he was earlier the co-founder of VerbalizeIt, a language translation services company which was featured on Shark Tank, which was acquired in 2016. He is also the author of The Making of an Entrepreneur, Lessons from a Winding Journey Towards Entrepreneurship. Ryan started off his career with Goldman Sachs, and he's done his MBA from the Wharton School of Business in 2012. He's also recognized by Inc. magazine as the top 35 under 35 entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, how did you get started into this world of startups, and what got you started to build this app life?
Sure. So I actually started out my career as an investor, and I worked for Goldman Sachs for a number of years, and I worked within a team that made private equity investments in growth companies around the country here in the US. And so I spent the first 4 years of my life out of undergrad traveling the road, getting to meet with the entrepreneurs and the C-suite executives that ran these companies, and trying to find ways to add value to their companies beyond just investment capital. And I did that for long enough to know that I wanted to be on the other side of the table. I wanted to be the entrepreneur and the recipient of capital and not the provider anymore. And so I really got the entrepreneurial bug from that experience. And so I came back to Philadelphia, where I got my MBA at Wharton. And I connected with a classmate for a concept for a language translation business that would enable travelers to navigate language barriers while traveling abroad. And that was my first foray into startup life. And as you mentioned, it's a company we grew for a number of years out of Techstars and out of Shark Tank before being acquired. And the concept for This App Saves Lives, or TASL for short, it really started out around the time of the acquisition of that last company, where I was out for a bike ride in New York City, and a driver ran a red light while text messaging on his phone. And I was fortunate enough to be able to see the car coming to avoid a direct collision, but I ended up flipping over my handlebars, fractured my hip, fractured my elbow. I was in really bad shape for quite some time. And so that was the genesis for starting the business. And so what started out as personally really experiencing that pain point quickly morphed into the realization that this is an issue that extends well beyond me, and it impacts about 2 million drivers here in the US alone every single
year. Right. No, I thought distracted driving is a big problem in India and Southeast Asian countries, but I think it's a problem all over the world. And I wanted to understand, since you worked with Goldman Sachs and you started off a career there, and then you moved on into the startup world. Do you think since we have a lot of listeners who are young, who are looking into getting either into the corporate world or into startups, do you think one should work in a big organization for a while and then get into the startup world, just to give a signal into the market that they're high quality? Or do you think if you could go back, you would start off building startups in the first go?
I think it's a tough question to answer, and just I'll give you my response as one data point, and it obviously depends on the person and their situation. I don't think you need to start out in the corporate world to be successful in growing a startup. Just like I don't think you need to experience life in a startup to be successful in the corporate world. For me, and the advice I always like to suggest is the best thing you can be doing as a working professional, especially at an early age, is to surround yourself with people far smarter than you are, that are able to help you elevate your own performance. And whether that's in a startup role or in a corporate environment, look for those opportunities where you are surrounded by people with a diverse breadth of experiences, expertise. That way, you'll learn from them and you'll add tools to your tool belt at an early age, which will help inform, your career moving forward. Because The one thing I can guarantee is that when you start out thinking you know what you're going to do with your life, I promise you it will change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great advice. And what were your learnings from Verbalize It? Because you were able to sell it off, and you did start off this company with your MBA classmate. But any learnings about what it goes to building an edtech company?
Everything. So I learned a lot. It was my first formal, um, hyper growth startup experience. I had started another company in the past, but it was more of a hobby on the side. This was a venture scalable and venture funded business, where I learned everything from, the importance of co-founder relationships to how to recruit, how to determine how to create product market fit, how to build a product, how to raise capital, scaling a two-sided business of a business of that operational intensity, um, customer acquisition, all the way out to how to figure out, your exit opportunities. It was a soup to nuts experience where I spent 4 years working around the clock, with a lot of highs and a lot of lows along the way. And so it was kind of a trial by fire experience where I just learned an incredible amount about what it's like to take a business from an idea on a piece of paper into a fully functioning company, into a company that was ultimately acquired.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's must be a great learning experience and great journey for you. But I want to talk about TASL. How do you reward people on your app? How does it work? Because do you need to install the app and switch on your GPS to make sure the drivers are not distracted? Can you just walk through the whole product feature of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way the technology works, the free mobile app, it's on iOS only today. It'll be on Android very soon. And the way it works is you don't need to open the app each time you get behind the wheel to drive. It automatically runs in the background anytime you start moving above a certain rate of speed. And that way, we know you're not walking, for example, you're actually driving a car. And the unique technology that we've built is able to determine what you're doing on your phone when you're behind the wheel. And certain actions like using your navigation, your Waze, your Apple and your Google Maps, listening to your favorite music or podcast, as well as making or receiving a hands-free phone call are absolutely fine. But anything else outside of that, sending a text, browsing your web, checking your email, checking your Facebook feed, anything that really takes your eyes off of the road, we view that as a distraction. And the way our technology works is we issue you rewards points for the time that you spend driving undistracted. And then drivers can then take those points, visit our rewards portal, and redeem those points for all of these incentives, which are sponsored by our community of merchant partners. Some of these are local brick and mortar stores, some of them are national companies, and some of them are e-commerce only companies. And effectively what we're doing is using those incentives offered by those companies to entice drivers not to drive distracted.
Interesting. And you mentioned about getting brand partners on board, and I spend a lot of time partnering with brands for the companies that I work for earlier. But just wanted to understand, what kind of brand offerings are you getting on board for these drivers, and how much, if you have some bit of data to talk about how much of reward points the drivers have saved, and how much of undistracted driving has it led to since they started using TASL?
Yeah, so collectively, our user base has driven over 8 million miles with TASL.
Oh.
And so we're already being able to associate our impact in terms of number of accidents and injuries prevented. And eventually we'll be able to say in the not so distant future that we've actually been able to save lives, which is very important for us. And the types of brands that we've lined up to incentivize that kind of safe driving behavior run the gamut from, food companies, quick service food, but also formal restaurants, desserts and treats, and a lot of really like high-end delicacy foods, But we've also got retail companies, we've got fitness companies, we've got services-oriented companies. And really what we've done is we've aligned the interest of those companies with the interests of our drivers, such that the companies that sponsor these rewards to motivate safe driving behavior, they benefit from joining our platform in two primary ways. First and foremost, when our users redeem their points to visit a store for a discount, be it a 10% off coupon or a free product, those stores benefit from acquiring a new customer, because that individual is certainly going to walk away with more than just whatever that free item might be. And then beyond that, today's consumers really do demand that the companies they support stand for something bigger than themselves. And so this is a really nice opportunity for our partners to go out there and be proud of partnering with a business that is saving lives along the way.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think the mission-led companies is getting, a lot of millennials and Gen Zs look up to, a mission statement from a company. And, I just wanted to understand, do you have your, what are the customer acquisition cost and lifetime value of the customer, or do you think it's still in the early stage to talk about such numbers?
We have that information to some extent. We've actually not paid for marketing at all. So from a LTV perspective, it's and a customer acquisition cost for traditional digital marketing strategies, it's not as easy to put a number to that, just given our rate of growth right now is predominantly organic growth. But we do have a sense for the value of our merchant partners in terms of the revenue that they're paying us, and that's something that we're going to continue to build out as we move forward in 2021.
Got it. And how did you get your initial set of users on board, since you've not paid any money on marketing? It's been word of mouth marketing, but wanted to understand, for such a unique model, how are you getting your first initial set of users?
It started out with good PR. The New York Times did a dedicated story on us. The Philadelphia Inquirer did a story on us. We got out there in the community. We talked to students. We talked to our merchant partners, by the way, have been a very effective way for us to acquire customers. And so when a new merchant comes on board as a partner, we ask them to promote their involvement with our business to their own audience. And that has really helped us acquire our users. And then from there, it's a product that people love to talk about. It's a product people love to share. Everyone likes earning great rewards for driving safely. And they also like the gamification of seeing how their safe driving has improved relative to themselves over time. And so a lot of the growth from there really was through that word of mouth and organic, structural organic growth within the product itself.
Right. And do you have other competitors in this space? Because it looks like a very unique business model, but are there other people also trying to solve the same problem?
There are other companies out there solving distractions with technology. We think we're amongst the first on the distracted driving landscape. There are companies out there that do things like focus on telematics, which are whether or not you're speeding or you're hard braking. There aren't a lot of companies, even amongst the insurance companies, that are currently focused on what you're doing on your phone when you're behind the wheel.
Got it. And since you've been part of other startups, and usually it's very important to build a great team. What are some of your biggest lessons when it comes to hiring talent, and where do most people go wrong when they're trying to build a team around a mission or around a company?
Yeah, I can't speak enough to the importance of having good individuals involved with you. In my experiences, I've worked with some really high quality professionals, fellow founders and other involved members of teams. And I've worked with some truly horrible individuals, just people that have, shocked and awed me in terms of how they developed over time. And so I can't speak enough about the importance of making sure that the founding team and even just the individuals that you bring on board as you grow the company, that there's a true cultural fit. Because at the end of the day, when you're a small 5 or 10 or 20 person startup, every person represents a significant portion of your staff. And if there's not a good fit, you have a cancer in your environment that can cause major issues at the company. And so culture matters a lot. And especially at the early stage, the one thing I always say is it's better to hire individuals who are perhaps less experienced. Maybe they're not as functionally experts in a certain area, but that are capable of learning and capable of bringing that level of energy. You can teach skills, you can teach experiences, you can't teach hustle, you can't teach energy and passion. And so I would much rather have someone who's passionate and hungry and wants to get involved, and then who needs to learn a few things, than I would a very, very experienced person that just doesn't bring that level of work ethic.
Got it. And recently one of the best articles I read about Jeff Bezos, where he doesn't think about his current quarter, but he thinks 3 years in ahead. But I was wondering for early stage founders who are always looking at a product market fit, what is the process for making decisions effectively? Because you're making tens of thousands of hundreds of decisions in a day or in a month. What is your process when you're looking at building product and making decisions when it comes to your business?
For me, it's staying close to our users. So I spend close to an hour a day talking to our users, understanding what they like, what they don't like, and then creating a pretty lengthy pipeline of initiatives that we want to launch that do right by our customers. A lot of that is product oriented. How can we make the product itself better? Some of it is marketing, messaging oriented, understanding that maybe some of the things that we think are obvious on our end, we haven't been properly relaying to our customers. But really just ensuring that we're marrying the wants and the needs of our customer with the vision of our business, and making sure that there is fundamental alignment there. And then, I won't lie, there's always opportunities. A customer may not realize something they want until they have it in their hands. And so we certainly have some, I think it's important for any entrepreneur to focus on their own vision and their own big picture for the company, even if they're not hearing it currently today from the customers.
No, absolutely. I think focusing on the customer who's like the real king for the business is really important. And when you talk of product market fit, how would you define it? Because a lot of startup founders are looking at and trying to get the product market fit, and how do entrepreneurs usually struggle with it? Since you've been part of 2 edtech companies before, any thoughts on what does it really take to get the product market fit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in first conducting the user persona analyses, understanding, who the audience is, what they're looking for, what the value they find in your product, and then getting to a point where, you say to a customer, look, how disappointed would you be if my company completely disappeared today? And if you start to get feedback that I wouldn't be all that disappointed, you probably don't have product market fit. If you get to a place where your product is growing virally by leaps and bounds, that means you've nailed your target segment, you've nailed your market opportunity. And I would say too many founders, and I've been subject to this as well, are so focused on pouring capital and grow prior to actually having the fit. And that doesn't work. That's a recipe for disaster. It's like building a house without a solid foundation. First, you get the foundation. You invest in growing the company to a point where you're enabling that product market fit. But if you haven't really gotten that fit today, then don't throw more fuel on that fire until you really have nailed that down.
Got it. And do you and your company focus on net promoter score? Do you think that's an important indicator for product market fit?
NPS is definitely effective. It's not something that we've done at TASL so far. That is that's a traditional metric that you can certainly look at. It's something that we do look at, but it's not our kind of our North Star as far as how we think about product market fit.
All right. Okay. Got it. And I wanted to understand, since past year have been very difficult because of COVID situation. How do you look at insecurity and self doubt and imposter syndrome, which usually comes up with startup founders, and how would you approach such negative emotions?
It's very important. I mean, COVID has been tough on us all. Setting aside the impact on various businesses, it's you know, being isolated is tough. It depends on your personality. Some people are more social than others. I personally am someone who I do consider myself introverted, but I thrive off of the energy of others, and not being in an office environment surrounded by my peer entrepreneurs, surrounded by other working professionals, surrounded by colleagues. That has certainly taken a little bit of a toll on me. And I would say that, having the Zoom calls, having conversations is important, but it's not the same as being in person. And so I would say, first and foremost, understand who you are, understand what you need to thrive. And one of the challenges with COVID is every entrepreneur in every entrepreneurial journey is going to have highs and they're going to have lows. And it's important to balance the highs with the lows. And a lot of times it's easy to do that when you're surrounded in person with others who can kind of keep you grounded, can see what you're feeling. And so COVID has certainly made that tough. And I would say it's, regardless of where we are in the world, pre-COVID, post-COVID, or during COVID, it's so important to have these conversations, to talk to friends, to talk to family, to talk to loved ones, to talk to colleagues, so that you're able to manage the emotional elements that come with growing a business from the ground up. And make no mistake, as you know, as well as I know, as well as everyone in the audience knows, growing a business is a labor of love, and it's going to be filled with so many emotions, both positive and negative.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's very important to be social interactive with your friends and family. There's another issue I want to talk about is when it comes to investors and comes to founders looking at solving the biggest of problems, you have to say no a lot. How do you approach saying no to opportunities and to other people's opportunities?
It's interesting. I've made that mistake a lot. I used to have this investor who always used to say to me, the dirtiest word in an entrepreneur's dictionary is the word "and," because you end up doing this and this and this, and you end up spreading yourself so thin that you end up accomplishing nothing. And I am someone who likes to do this and this and this. And that's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for waste. And so the word no allows you to focus. And it's not that you don't care about the other opportunity, or you don't care about the person that wants you to do X, Y, and Z. It behooves you to say no, to focus in on what you need to do to grow your company, to invest in yourself, to hire the right people. You need to stay focused, and the word no allows you to do that. And that's a lesson that took me a while to learn. It's a lesson I learned a lot at VerbalizeIt. It's a lesson I continue to learn today. I won't pretend like I've nailed it. And I don't think there's any entrepreneur out there that is, isn't enticed, at least, by some other opportunities which might lie outside of the core focus. But I do believe that staying laser focused on what you're doing is very important. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't take a step back and look at the bigger picture. It doesn't mean you can't have a list of things that you would like to add to your current focus areas in the future. I think that's a very important thing to do, because sometimes we're so in the weeds in what we're doing that we forget to take a step back. But there is the word no does allow you to do a lot more faster by focusing on the key priorities of your company.
Got it. And I since you solved the problem of distracted driving, I do want to talk about AI and Tesla. Do you think going forward, Do you think AI would help solve the problem of distracted driving, like how Tesla is trying to solve it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, our view on distracted driving as it relates to autonomous vehicles and AI, for example, are I certainly welcome a world in which autonomous vehicles drive for their safety. I don't think we're there anytime soon, and we're certainly not there on wide scale. Certainly in the country of the U.S., also globally. And so until we reach that point where we've reached a perfect efficiency, where nobody's driving behind the wheel looking at their phone at the same time, I don't think we're going to be there anytime soon. I welcome the time that we do get there, but I just don't think that's going to happen at scale where it's going to impact the number of accidents and injuries and deaths anytime soon.
All right. And Ryan, I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
Anything by James Clear I like. I'm also, and I know he's been a guest on your show.
Yeah.
So I like his books. So probably Atomic Habits is a big one by him. I actually really liked Bad Blood. The Theranos story was really interesting. I mean, I could go on and on. I keep a list of books that I love, but James Cleary is certainly a favorite of mine.
Absolutely, I think Automatic Habits is also one of my favorite books.
Yep.
And, if you could go back in time when you started working on this app Sales Lives, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
I think I would have found a fellow founder to grow the company with. It was a experienced, mature individual. That's not something that I was able to do. And I think having worked with really high quality co-founders before, it's important. It's not required. Many people grow a company as a sole founder, but having a good founder would have been helpful. And then on top of that, I think what we ended up doing was we grew a little bit too quickly at the outset. We were initially focused on growing in one market, proving it out and expanding across the country. And we ended up expanding across the country a bit too quickly in light of the New York Times coming out and writing about us. And all of a sudden we had users all over the country, and we wanted to make sure that we were being, supportive of them and having the brands and the rewards to motivate them. But staying focused on your singular market until you had proven it out is another thing I would go back and do a little bit differently.
Got it. And do you have any favorite online tools, example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom?
Slack has been a lifesaver. I like Gmail's Boomerang tool. It's helpful for sending emails. Some of that's been big for me. I'm trying to think. My CRM keeps me organized, so I love HubSpot. Basically anything that allows me to manage a growing company and all the moving pieces in a very organized manner, Slack and HubSpot are big for me.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. Ryan, what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about this app Saves Lives?
Well, first and foremost, you can visit thisappsaveslives.com, where there's a direct link to download the app in the iOS App Store. You can also search for This App Saves Lives in the Apple App Store. And my direct contact information is ryan.frankel@thisappsaveslives.com. You can also email our team, which is team@thisappsaveslives.com.
We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my time speaking with you.
Likewise, I really appreciate you inviting me onto the show, and pleasure to connect with you.
Same here. Thank you.